What's good, YouTube? Quinn Wade, basketball analysis coming to y'all with a quick video. We're going to talk about Derrick Rose, the Minnesota Timberwolves, a player that was an MVP in the league, one of the best players in the league, perennial all-star, um, one of the fan favorites in the league, a guy that say, why can't I win MVP? Why can't we make the playoffs? Next thing you know, he made the playoffs in the next year. Next thing you know, he won the MVP the next year. Um, Sadly, tore his ACL and his career went down from there. And that's how we got to this point of Derrick Rose coming off the bench for the Cleveland Cavaliers, getting traded the same season. He signed as a free agent to go to the Cavaliers. Halfway through the season, he was traded. Then he got bought out to come off the bench for Tom Thibodeau in the Minnesota Timberwolves. He had a okay production off the bench. In the playoffs, he obviously had a good series, giving you double-digit points on 50% from the field, 70% from three. But you got to take that with context. It's in a small sample size. Obviously, Derrick Rose is not a 70% three-point shooter. He always been a streaky three-point shooter, not really as explosive as he used to be. I definitely want to bring up that New York Knicks. He showed signs that he can possibly still be a starter in this league with the Knicks. Obviously, he was putting up empty numbers, going to the paint, getting layups, getting dunks, having that step pull-up jumper really helped him out a lot because he had a couple go-to moves that can get people off of him and also score the basketball. So he had some moves that he had to get. I think that's why it does matter to have a go-to move, because if everything else fails, you still have something to go back on that you know can work. And I feel like he started having that with New York. He's, like I said, he lost a lot of lateral quickness, a lot of explosiveness, and he's a guy that was predicated on his athleticism, and he did not age well. And that's the saddest part, because he was one of the most explosive players we ever seen, one of the most exciting players to see. Like, let's just go back and remember, if Derrick Rose was playing, you was watching. He was on TNT. He was on ESPN. He was in the playoffs. Well, he hit a game winner in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Cleveland Cavaliers. So this guy can play. And at the end of the day, not in the second round. They ended up playing the Atlanta Hawks, but he had a game winner against LeBron James. And Derrick Rose looked like he was going to recover, and it looks like Chicago had his back. The fans was rooting for him. Remember, they had the commercials with Adidas that, he's coming back. Everybody waiting for the return of Derrick Rose. And now we have a guy that's fighting to stay in the league, and it shows you that you can't really believe in NBA is going to be your living. Because injuries are a part of the game, and you have to work hard to stay in the position. You have to work hard to stay relevant. That's why you have guys like LeBron that get so much praise, because he's been able to stay healthy, but not only stay healthy, but he's been able to continue to expand and add to his game and still dominate the game of basketball at a 15-year career. Derrick Rose haven't even made it close to that, and he's already basically done. The Knicks, he showed glimpses, but he came off the bench with the Cavaliers after that season. So, this is sad, especially as a fan of Derrick Rose, but this is reality. We seen to Dwight Howard, even, to be honest, because that just happened. He went from a guy that everybody wants, everybody's put him in that top five, and now he's a guy that's getting traded for 2 second-round picks, and he's fighting to stay in the league himself. He hasn't even reached a contract with anybody right now. So it's reality, it's realistic, it's sad, but it's true, and it's something that's fans and players, something that we have to accept, that the NBA is a business. He came out, he took Rondo's spot, and he became the guy in the East. Next thing you know, he's a guy that, in the West, coming off the bench, not really making that much of a contribution, even though he had a good playoffs. Like I said, you can't really take that into context because he didn't play that many games. In the games he did play, he was basically a guy that was feeding off other players that made his job easier, giving him lanes and getting him wide open shots. He was the guy creating those shots for the Kyle Korvers. Now he's a guy that's benefiting from those shots. I just like the fact that he's been humble and he accepted that he's not the player that he used to be. He's 29 years old, I think, or 30. I don't know. He's in that range, and he's at the tail end of his career. He's on the downside of his career, and this is one of the hardest parts. Seeing that you could have been a Hall of Famer, you was the franchise guy, you was the city, you was the person that they thought was going to bring them a championship, and now going into the season, you might not even be. Um, you're just not even a six man probably. So this is just sad to see, but I'm glad that he was able to be humble and he's still fighting to stay in the league. Some guys would have gave up, and if they do, I respect them too. It's kind of embarrassing to go from being a franchise guy to a guy that people just say, "Oh, Derrick Rose, yeah, he's on the roster." That's not where you want to be at. I said the same thing about another player in this draft, OJ Mayo. If you had the ability to be one of the biggest high school phenoms and average 20 in college, and even come to the NBA and average 16 to 18 points a game, um, that's a guy that shows superstar potential. And both of these guys, even though Derrick Rose had a better career, will not be in the Hall of Fame. And that's something that we couldn't say back then. But at the end of the day, like we all know, once he fell off, somebody else took his spot. Somebody else took his spotlight, and they kept going on. And Derrick Rose now has to find a way to fight to stay in the league for the next couple years. Because remember, Minnesota picked him up after after he got bought out, and now he's in Minnesota, and it's sad, but he's fighting to stay in the league. Honestly, and he doesn't have the 3-point shooting. That's something that he has to improve just to stay in the league. He has to improve playing off the ball to stay in the league. So he's a guy that everybody wanted, everybody dreamed about, everybody wanted to be him, and now he's the guy that at the end of the day is going to fight to stay on the roster for the next 3 to 4 to 5 years, especially as he declined more athletically. It's going to be even harder. So he has to do the fundamentals. He has to do the little things now just to stay on the roster. And that's why I had to say that, because this is not a long-term deal. They didn't give him a 3-year deal. They didn't give him a 4-year deal. They gave him a 1-year deal, which means he's disposable. If we keep him, that's good. If we don't, at the end of the day, we're only committing $2.1 million. And he's not even going to get $1 million playing for this team because of taxes and other things. So he's basically playing because he loved the game. He basically playing under Tom Thibodeau, a guy that utilized him and got the best out of him as a coach. He's playing for a team that's up and coming, has multiple All-Stars on the roster, multiple All-NBA players on the roster. He can feed off them. He can play off them and still probably be a solid, guy off the bench that can give you some buckets, that can knock down some shots, that can even play in crunch time and be a decision maker off the ball, or even a decision maker with the ball on his hand, because he hit big shots in his career. But also it is the reality that he ain't the same, and it's hard to see that at his age and how his career went in the beginning and how it is now. I'm not gonna laugh at him. I'm not gonna mock him. I'm not gonna talk trash about him. I just have respect for Derrick Rose. I like the guy. He seemed like a cool guy. But at the end of the day, this is the game that we love at the same time. So we'll see what happens with him. We'll see if he makes a resurgent off the bench. Can he be a 6-man? Can he come off the bench and give you buckets like he did in the playoffs? These things will matter if he wants to stay in the league. So luckily, he has the teammates in Tom Thibodeau. So we'll see what happens. At the end of the day, the Minnesota Timberwolves not really getting nothing negative out of this. They give a roster spot to a guy that can play and knows Tom Thibodeau in them. So they're not losing anything but a roster spot. You're not paying him anything. You're not asking him to be the old Derrick Rose. You're not building your franchise around him. You're not hoping that he's going to be great. You're just saying he can play, he can contribute, and we'll give him a role on this team. And I feel like he can do that role. This is a team that has lacked scoring off the bench, especially after losing Jamal Crawford. This is a team that lacks ball handlers off the bench. This is a team that needs scoring punch. This is a team that needs more players on the bench. And Derrick Rose probably the best player off their bench if you think about it, besides Gorgie Day and them. So they need the bench. They need the scoring. And they need the ball handling. And maybe Derrick Rose can really embrace this role of coming off the bench. And if Tom Thibodeau sees like he did in the playoffs and give him valuable minutes, we might see some splashes and some highlights from Derrick Rose over this season. But we also can see him struggle and be waived. That's reality though. So we'll see what happens if he's going to be a six man. If he's going to come in and get 15 minutes off the bench, or will he be buried on the bench, hoping to get in, or will he just be a guy that he makes the roster now because he is a cheap acquisition and he get waived by the deadline, get bought out. We don't know what's going to happen, but them are the options that they have right now. But the Wolves do need some scoring off the bench, and I think he can fit that role. Let me know what you guys think about Derrick Rose. Check out my website, analysisplayground.com. Link will be in the description in the comment section below. Check out my Facebook page, analysisplayground.com. Link will be in the description in the comment section below. Quinn Wade, I'm gone, and this is a hard moment for me to really speak about because Derrick Rose is one of my favorite players.